You set up CrashPlan, you're backing up your files, but you want to make sure that everything is working the way it should. You need to check the status of your backup, but you don't know how to do that. I'm Brian, and I'm here to help. There are a number of places you can find the status of your backup. Let's start by talking about the backup status report. You may receive an email report about your device or devices in your organization, depending on your notification settings. In that report, you'll find the status of the backup for each device in your organization. It shows you the username, device name, target destination, amount of data selected, amount of files selected, percentage of your file selection which has been backed up, time since the backup was last completed, and the time since the last backup activity occurred. Next to the numbers for selected size and number of files, you'll also see an indication of whether the amount has gone up or down, and by how much. You will also see a summary of the totals of all the devices in each organization. One thing to note about the percentage of your backup that is complete, the number reflects the percentage of the file selection at the time the report was run. Because the entirety of an updated file is marked for backup until it can be analyzed to determine what actually needs to be backed up, if a device has a large number of updates, this number can be fairly low, despite backup having been previously completed. It is useful to use this information alongside the backup activity and completion to determine backup health. Recent activity and completion should give confidence that the backup is healthy. As an admin, you can also run a device backup report from the reporting section of the admin console. To limit the amount of data you receive, you may want to set some of the options for which devices it will show you information about. Once you've got your desired filter set, you'll click Run Report and the matching devices will be shown at the bottom of the screen. The results here will provide all the information that is available in the emailed backup report, as well as many other aspects of each device's backup. You can select which fields you want to display by clicking on the sliders button in the upper left of the table, then checking any of the items that you would find helpful. The report you have run will be filtered to only show those items. Viewing all of the possible aspects of the backup report is difficult in a browser, but you can click the Export Records button to export a file that contains all of the data from your report. This file will be in a comma-separated value format and should be able to be opened in a spreadsheet program. Another way you can determine the status of your backup is by checking on the archive size. You can compare the size to the amount of data that you're backing up and determine if the size seems appropriate. Keep in mind that your archive is compressed, so it may be 10 to 20% smaller than the amount of data you have selected in general, and if there's a lot of duplicate data on the endpoint, that will reduce the comparative size as well. Here are a couple of ways you can check your archive size. If you click on a device in the admin console, you are taken to the device detail window. Here you can find the used storage for a device. If you compare this number to the selected size, you should get some idea as to whether the device has been backing up successfully or not. If there's a huge discrepancy between these numbers, something may be amiss. You can also view the archive size in your CrashPlan app. Once you've opened it, you can find the selected size next to the device name. Now that you know how much is selected for backup, click on Settings or the Settings button to access the Settings window. On the Destinations tab, you can find space used for each destination. Again, compare this number to the selected size to determine if it seems to be within the expected range. You can also check on the status of your backup by looking at the backup activity. We touched briefly on this when discussing the backup reports, but let's talk about it a bit more. You can check on activity either in the console or in the app itself. First, here's how to find and utilize this information in the admin console. From the device details page in the admin console, we can see the last activity time, which is the last time the device backed up any data, and the last completed time, which is the last time that 100% of the files in the file selection were completely backed up. If you have a high percentage of your data backed up and recent activity, your backup is likely pretty healthy. Sometimes a small number of files can't be backed up for one reason or another, so the last completed number may not be as recent. If you see that your last activity number is recent, but your last completed number is not, you may want to check the history log to see what it says about recent backups. We'll talk about what to look for here when we cover viewing the history log from the client. A device must be online to access its history log from the console. From the CrashPlan app, we can quickly determine the current status of the backup by checking the status symbol. This can be found next to each destination, as the status may be different for each. If you click on the CrashPlan icon in the system tray or menu bar, you'll also see a small version of this pop up. There are a number of symbols that may be shown in these locations. A moving blue circle indicates that CrashPlan is backing up. A green check inside a circle indicates that backup has completed, but there may be files to back up at the next backup interval. Other symbols indicate various reasons why the backup is not running. If If you see these, you may need to take steps to get your backup going. You can also check the history log from the CrashPlan app. On Mac, click Window at the top of the screen, then select History. On Windows, you would click on Tools at the top of the app, and then History. You'll be taken to the log that CrashPlan keeps of its backup history. You should see when backups start, how much data is being backed up, and the status when they stop. If the ending messages say completed, then everything that was in the to-do list at that time has been backed up. If they say stopped, then there was more to do, but the backup had to stop for some reason or another. Sometimes you'll see completed, but then it will say there were a number of files that were unable to be backed up. This indicates that CrashPlan was unable to get a usable copy of the file to back up, and the files will be put back into the to-do list for the next backup. If you see this a lot, you may need to look at what files aren't being backed up. The CrashPlan support site has articles titled Unable to Back Up Files for each OS. You may want to check those out if you're in this state. The final place that you can look to check the status of your backup is in the Restore window. You can find this in either the app or the console. From the device details screen in the console, you'll click the Restore button to pull up the Restore tree. Anything you see in the Restore window has been backed up to the archive. If you put a check in the top level folder in your tree, and then let the Restore calculate, you can see how much data is available to be restored. The calculation is complete when you see green check marks next to the amount of files, folders, and the size for the restore. Compare the totals to what you would expect to be backed up. If they're significantly different, your backup may not be functioning as intended. From the app, you access the Restore window by clicking on the Restore Files button. In this window, the calculation of your restore should occur much more quickly than in the console. There will be no green checks, but once the data appears, you can compare it to what you would expect from your backup. You now have several ways to check the status of your backups, and know where to find those in both the CrashPlan app and in the admin console. If you're seeing an issue with your backups completing, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team. We're always happy to help.